We're live.
Hello, this is George.
And Bonnie. Mwah. And it's Tuesday.
Tuesday, and this is
7 o'clock.
The Tiny Road to Yeshua. I know we're talking about Iesous and Zeus and all the other Zeuses.
It is.
And I hate to tell you this, but I hunted all over my Bibles and I couldn't find any one of those. So I did something I don't usually do. I went to the computer and I looked up Zeus. And when I looked up Zeus, there was a humongous amount of writing about him. So I studied him all week. And I thought, if I do that, this is going to be about a 4-hour talk. So I decided just to write down the headlines so you people get the general idea of what I studied. Or what I read anyway. I didn't study it. Okay.
Well, you did in a way.
We looked up Zeus,
Hi, Jim.
like I said. The topics is the only thing I'm going to read to you. 1. Jesus is the medieval Latin spelling of Iesous. Now, I'm not saying to believe these things. I'm just saying this is what I studied. And I truthfully don't believe most of them. But this is what was on the computer. 2. Does the name Jesus actually mean Hail Zeus? 3. Is Jesus Zeus? 4. Does Jesus mean Hail Zeus? 5. Zeus and Jesus, the shocking connection. That was good. 6. All hail Zeus. Now this is from looking up Iesous. 7. Here's a good one. It sounds nothing like Yeshua. Learn Jesus' original name. Okay. 8. Here's another good one. What is Jesus' other names?
Hey, Dallas.
9. Jesus Christ is the name of the pagan sun god of Christianity. 10. Iesous is Greek, the Sabbath covenant. 11. The truth about the name Lord. Okay, like I said, she put on the computer today that I've studied quite a bit this week, and reading those, going through those, I understood that not one of those description things are in the scriptures. It's made up by man. And then put on the computer, and people who study the computer think they're studying truth. Here's something I come up with. Most of those have very little understanding of truth, as far as we're concerned. First, we typed in Iesous. Out of those 11 that we just read, we got 2 where it stated Iesous at all in the title. We got 7 with the name Jesus. It's Margaret Ann.
Hey, Margaret Ann.
This is for you, Margaret Ann. Okay. 5 with the name Zeus. Yeshua. 1 time. And that was to say, let me see if I can find it real quick. Oh yeah. It sounds nothing like Yeshua. Learn Jesus' other original name. Okay. So, out of all those 11 that I read over and trying to get something that we could discuss or talk about this week, I found very little but really referring to what should be said. And I was up at 3:30 this morning, and that's when I found all those, and I tried to write them down and tried to study them so I could come up with that kind of stuff. I Googled.
Did you Google or Bing search? Did you go into Google like you? Now listen, like you go into your Facebook page. You know, you bring Google up first, and then you type it in that box.
Google came up. I put in Iesous. Tom, I don't even know what Bing is.
So apparently you didn't Bing.
All right. That was what I come up with this morning. So I don't think I binged. Now, some of this will be repetitious because I tried to work a little bit of what we were going to talk about in that first part. I thought it would be interesting to study Zeus before we went into Iesous during the week before the day. Zeus, god of the sky in the ancient Greek mythology. George has already told me that because he studied all that stuff. He's a brilliant one here. He's considered the ruler, father of all gods and humans. Some say identical with the Roman god Jupiter. Now this is what I get on the computer. I didn't find none of this in the scripture. Zeus had 2 wives. His first one was Metis. How do you pronounce that? Metis? Metis. My boss said so. And it was written, whom it is believed he ate. Now
Hi, Deborah.
when somebody got that, and I looked that up, and they said that he ate her because if she had a second child, it would be more powerful than Zeus himself. And he had another wife, Hera, who was also his sister. Now, after I studied Zeus for a while, I concluded there was so much written about Zeus that it goes to the realm of, to really believe in him, one must be a total Greek in belief. Except for those few things I stated to start out with, we see no sense or reasoning in going any further with him. So right now we're batting a 0. Okay. Now Iesous.
So from Zeus to Iesous.
This is, like I stated before, for the fun of it, I did something I usually never do with both Zeus and Iesous. I went to the computer to see what other people put on the computer about both of them.
You missing something?
Yes, I'm missing something. It's very important. I guess I already went over it. But anyway.
Maybe it's under that orange stripe.
Now Iesous. The writing was wordy, very wordy, so convincing that we would suggest, for us anyway, a total avoiding of any of that brainwashing. But that is totally up to each individual. A lot of their writings will tickle your ears, convince you you are right. Why? Because you like what it says. And you really have to change nothing with your denominational philosophy the way a lot of this talk about Iesous. And like the start of these said, you know, Jesus means Hail Iesous, or Hail Zeus. It sounds nothing like Yeshua. Learn Jesus' original name. See, a lot of people won't have to change much when they read that. You're content, or they're content, and that is all you really were looking for. Someone else agreed with you and your lifestyle, your preacher, and that's the way you've been taught your whole life, because you can angle it whichever way you want with Jesus. So it's got to be true for you. Here's a shocker. I've stated this many times, but I wrote that. I don't know why. Do what, believe what, follow whatever your little heart desires. Be happy here. For where your next journey is will be crowded with billions and billions and billions walking down that large road, going to that huge gate with you. Now, one place on the computer, it says the Latin word Jesus, and I don't know how they got that, is a translation of the Greek word Iesous. Now, to most people, when they first glance over that, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? We believe that's totally untrue. If you're just looking for some strange form of comfort, then that explanation and sound is as good as any for you, right? Why rock the boat? You might take on water, get your feet wet, trying to find some iota of truth. But if you never really study for truth, then your boat stays dry, won't it? Your feet stay dry. And you will be happy on this place we call earth. And who really cares about the next part of your eternity? Why be concerned now about that? You're happy in your walk. So most of you are probably thinking, well, back off, George. Stop trying to get people to actually study, to find some form of truth at all. In other words, who's that comedian? Don't worry, be happy.
I don't know. Can't remember.
Was that Philip Wilson?
I was thinking Flip Wilson,
but anyway,
no, that's who it was.
Never thought I'd talk about Flip Wilson on this. How about we dig a little deeper than those biblical scholars that you know or have in your church on that, or the ones on the computer, or even in your church? You might as well add your denomination into those categories also. When I looked up Iesous, I started to think how easy it would be to lead people the wrong way. The way of eliminating the Messiah's real name. And we'll get to that in a couple minutes.
Oh yeah, Iesous is Greek.
Iesous is Greek, yes.
Okay.
Really, what difference does it make to you? If you don't use his real name, God knows when you use a name that he never was called, not even one time, is good enough for the Father, right? Even if the name is Iesous, or any name that comes from Iesous. Who cares if his name was totally different than any name you have ever heard before? What's the big deal? After all, if everyone called you Alfonso or Rufus, you would automatically appreciate that. That's a big word for me. Names are just that, names for recognition. So others can and will know to whom you are talking to, having a conversation with, a way to get other people's attention. Think about it. A way to get the Father's attention. To know you are talking to that certain someone, and that other person will respond and possibly talk back to his truthful answer or not. In one place, we read that Iesous, now this is a good one. I'm telling you not to believe all these things I'm telling you I found on the computer. Here's another good one. We read where Iesous is a Jewish or Hebrew name. I have no idea where they come up with that.
A Jewish
That is an example
Hebrew
of
name.
that is an example of how you can take and put something on the computer and sound like you know what you're doing or talking about, and they'll put it on there and they'll leave it on there, or you'll be able to leave it on there and it'll stay there for a long time, and a lot of people will read it and believe it. A total falsehood.
Considering it's Greek, it's hard to be Hebrew.
Here's another writing. Iesous is Greek for Jesus. Meaning, Iesous is Greek for Jesus, meaning, Hail Zeus. Interesting. Like we said before, the Greek Zeus is the king of all of the gods, the Greek god of the sky and thunder, the god of all men. He was the god higher than all their other gods, and the Greeks had many of them. And who am I to tell any Greek what to do or believe? That too is like any of you. It is totally up to you, each individual. We really don't care. I really don't. I can't stress that enough. I really don't care if you don't think you need to study. Just listen, or at least believe what someone else is telling you, because you want to be happy, content. That's what Mom and Dad went to church for. That's what we went there and heard that guy talk about up front. Maybe he got it off that computer that I was reading. Okay.
Probably not.
We give you our opinion. Now about Iesous. I guess I should read that all in one sentence.
Hey,
We
Tina.
give you our opinion now about Iesous. There are so many angles about Iesous, that word, that it blows your mind. One person writes that his name Iesous was actually in the ancient writing. Now this is a good one. One person wrote that the name Iesous was actually in the ancient writings long before Yeshua was here. So his name was around a long time before the Messiah's birth. Therefore, you could call the Messiah by that Greek name. That's what this guy claimed. It would be interesting to find out if that writer who wrote that and put it on the computer was one of those Greek professors. I wouldn't doubt that a bit. But in reality, I don't care what some professor, religion, denomination, preacher, or teacher wrote. You can ask George about that. Well, if you could see him, he's on the other side. I turn it around again, but it buzzed out every time we do that, so I'm not letting him on. I don't know what there is about him, but it doesn't matter what we write, but it does matter if you study and if you find truth in God's Word. During one of our talks, George and I, we have talks every Wednesday morning, usually on Wednesday, but we were discussing why the Greeks called the Messiah Iesous. When all of a sudden we came up with they had a Zeus for their main god, so to speak, and they knew that Yeshua was Hebrew, but they wanted a Messiah. You might say their second in command. So instead of calling him a little Zeus or a second head on the main god, they came up with this Greek name that almost reached their main god, but would be over all other lesser gods, and therefore looked not for a little Zeus, but raised up Iesous to show his position to everyone that this Iesous wasn't at the level of their main god Zeus, but was the next best thing. When him and I were talking, we asked each other questions, and we said, you know, they had to come up with a name. Zeus was already taken.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't. Well, I don't know if I wrote it down here or not. I better get going.
It's all right.
You might say, then their main god Zeus lost no following, but showed everyone that the Greeks, as well with their Plato and Socrates, through their intelligence, were superior. They now had the Messiah in their hands, not those low-life Hebrews anymore. So look at the pure intelligence of the Greek nation and then society, because they were the brains of history. Like always, you people believe what you want, whatever you like. Like I always state a number of times in our talk, I don't care, but it might help your eternity to study for truth if you really are looking for truth. If you want a denominational brainwashing and easy route, peace in your life, and the heck with your eternity, go for it. And find your street and go for your little walk to your corner. We won't be waiting for you on the tiny road to Yeshua. I'll guarantee you. We feel everybody must take that tiny road to Yeshua to go through that little gate, to actually go through Yeshua to meet the Father. You do whatever you want. Walk where you want. Believe what you want. That's your business. Nothing pushing you to believe, but it might help you to actually study for truth. But that too is for you and you only. We don't care. See, I can't care. You people, individuals, take society's belief down with your negativity to or towards Yeshua. Believe in any made-up name you want. Do what you want. Don't complain later when your desire now gets you only looking at that tiny road to Yeshua. Something else I looked up today. We have a huge amount of so-called Christians who have made the statement, and they do believe that the King James Version is the only error-free Bible, and that's the only one they will follow. Okay, let's look at that. First original King James Version was commissioned by King James to be translated in, I believe it was 1605 or 1606. It was finished, we might say translated, in 1611. Now what makes a big difference there? That was 21 years before the Catholic priest, Jerome, put a J in front of Iesous. So the original King James would not have had the name Jesus in it either.
It didn't exist.
They didn't have Jesus in the original translation. Now that is interesting. The original one had to either have the Hebrew name Yeshua or Yeshua, or they had to have Iesous. Think about that.
What was the original King James? What language was it written in?
I wasn't around in 1601. I've never,
What-
or 1621,
So what do you?
1611, and I
I'm
would
assuming it wasn't
assume
written in English.
It was written in more of an English type writing than in
Oh, I
the
see,
Greek.
like an Old English.
Like an old
Yes, yes, right. Okay, I got you. Okay.
And the name they used may have been Yeshua. I've never seen a 1611 King James. I wouldn't know.
Maybe.
And if it said,
maybe-
if I looked at a 1611 and somebody claimed they had one 1611 to 1631, and it had the name Jesus in there, I would have to say that's not correct. Because when King James had it wrote, it didn't have that name in there. It didn't come about for 21 years.
Would the name Yahweh been something that would have been in there, or was that after that time frame, you think? Because I've heard that name too.
I don't know. Yeah, I've never seen, like I said, I've never saw a 16. Dallas asked, did the Hebrews name their children Yeshua before the Savior was born? Yes.
And then said,
Do
they do that now?
Do they do that now?
I would assume so.
I know that Spanish people often use Iesous for naming their boys.
Yeah.
Yes, I know that the Spanish-speaking people, and they use Iesous, and they call it Jesus, and they did have Hebrews named Yeshua before the Messiah was there, and I imagine there's ones that copy his name afterwards. I don't think the country put a penalty on if
They banned that name
named
after it was used.
They didn't ban the name.
After the one and only was used.
That was interesting when I found that about the King James Version.
Yeah, that was before that was even a word.
And before it was even a word. And George come up with some really good stuff about that too. Okay. He's smart. Okay. That means 389 years ago, they came up with a J on Iesous to make it Jesus. But the original King James was 410 years ago. That's why it's 21 years before
that name change.
Jesus would have been put in there.
Very interesting. You find out more cool things.
That was just some extra credit. Took a while, but
Extra
found.
credit.
Okay. Now, I don't know if I should end with this one.
I don't know what that is.
I think I'm going to use that one for last. All right. George came over the other day, and he had something that was written by C.S. Lewis.
Mm-hmm. It's an author.
And he wrote, and we rewrote what he said, and if we put the right words in there, it makes a lot of sense of what I just talked about. When you have killed a word, this is what C.S. Lewis wrote, you have also blotted from the human mind the thing that word originally stood for. Do I have to rewrite that? Read.
I think you did it right, but you can start over if you'd like.
When you have killed a word, you have also blotted from the human mind the thing that word originally stood for.
Mm-hmm.
Bingo. Makes sense. Men do not long continue to think what they have forgotten how to say. If you take it out of society, after years, men don't even think of that word no more. It's a forgotten existence. Those who allow their language to be corrupted find their minds following suit. They don't even think about it anymore, is what he's really actually saying. In the loss of words, something human is lost. That's what C.S. Lewis wrote. George and I put our heads together. We each got a bump on our head, but we have. When you have killed, now here's what we wrote. When you have killed the word Yeshua.
Tom said out of sight, out of mind.
Tom wrote out of sight, out of mind. All right, here's what George and I wrote. When you have killed the word Yeshua, you have also blotted from the human mind the thing that Yeshua originally stood for. Men do not long continue to think what they have done and forgotten how to say. Those who allow their language to be corrupted by this act find their minds following suit. If it's Yeshua, the Greeks took Yeshua out, then Yeshua, after centuries, after a period of time when people who actually knew Yeshua or the real truth died off, then the name would have also disappeared. Okay, I'll finish it. Find their minds following suit. In the loss of the word Yeshua, something, meaning his human name, is lost. That writing in itself not only stands to reason, it stands to look at what actually happened to Yeshua, or Yeshua's real name. And how when the Greeks changed it to Iesous, and the priest by the name of Jerome changed it to Iesous, and how it's evolved where 2 billion, at least 2 billion people follow the name Jesus, not one of those is Yeshua. And we find that so many people who call themselves believers and Christians have no idea who Yeshua, the word Yeshua is, let alone who he was. We say this a number of times, that when George first came over here and wanted to have a talk with me, he wanted to set me straight.
He did.
I fooled him.
But he didn't.
All right, this is my ending. And this is true. It's heartfelt. I'm not good enough to even shake the hand of a true believer. I'm not smart enough to pray for someone, especially the ones who tell God that he is smarter than God himself. It's not God's will that they need because he's so smart. It's the person's will be done. When they pray, they don't say, the Father will. That means the Father's will doesn't mean much. Oh, you can't say that. Well, you always say, you hardly ever hear anybody say anything about, not my will, Lord, but your will be done. Even Yeshua, when he hung on that execution stake, asked the Father to take from him the pain and the agony and the horrible brutality that he or Yeshua was, and Yeshua added, not his will,
But thine be done.
but thy will, or your will be done, Father. Yet now we hear preachers who brainwash their congregations by telling them that's not how you should pray. God knows your will, so therefore you should pray in your will, not God's will. In their statements, they must tell more religious... No, let me read that. In their statements, they must feel more religious than that guy that hung there on that stake. See, he didn't make that comment. He asked, and then he said who it was supposed to be. God's will, the Father's will. We don't go to the Father with any made-up name, not Iesous, Jesus, or Jesus. No, we always go in the name He was and is and will always be and have. Yeshua. Now, that's the last topic we're going to have at home. Hopefully, well, maybe not. We might be here next Tuesday.
We'll be here next Tuesday.
She just told me.
Well, I have an
We'll be here next
appointment Tuesday.
And after that, we're going to be out on the road. And
But
did we
still doing
keep the
Tuesday.
same time last time?
7 o'clock
Eastern
Eastern time, no matter where we were.
Yes. And when we get out by Idaho or Arizona, our 7 o'clock might be
4 in the afternoon.
4 in the afternoon for us, but we'll try to keep it the same time that you're coming on right now.
That's the best way to do it. I think that's the best way to do it.
And next week we're going to talk. I've been trying to get this in for a couple of weeks, or at least 3-4 weeks. Short things that I wrote, and actually what George and I put together in our conversation. We're going to talk about them next Tuesday. Don't know how long it's going to be. I didn't think this one would be more than 15, 20 minutes.
So
But it took a little longer.
that's okay.
I thank everybody for being on.
Yep.
And I was trying to come up with some logic why they would have the name Iesous. Because I said that we were going to talk about Iesous. Then we talked about Zeus. Well, I tell you the truth, I couldn't do it. Every time, those categories that I went through and over and over and over during the week and this morning, it made me more convinced than ever that there's a brainwashing out there against the Hebrew name, Yeshua. So, you people all have a great day, great night.
Yep.
Have a great week.
Yep. Thank
We
you
will
guys.
be on
Have an
hopefully
awesome week.
next Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll be on next Tuesday.
May something, I don't know what it is.
May 4th.
May 4th.
May 4th.
7 o'clock.
Yep.
Love you.
7 o'clock. Have
Oh,
an awesome
let me
week.
tell you something. If anybody talks to me on Facebook or on that talk chat thing, I am not good at that. I didn't even know what Bing stood for when Tom asked me about Bing Ding or
I don't know
whatever
what
it
it
was.
is either.
I tried to talk to somebody this weekend and it just didn't work out. But I will try my best to try to do something if somebody talks to me. Don't know what. The computer is a lot smarter than I am. But you don't have to be smart to put something on the computer. You got to have a good talking skill. I guess it'd be good typing skill too, because I'm terrible at that. Anyway, love you.
Love you guys.
Have a
Have an
great-
awesome week. See you next Tuesday.